So the Department of Justice has made a major announcement in response to that radical federal judge who tried to prevent President Trump from deporting TDA gang members. Now, before we actually read what the DOJ had to say, I want you to hear Tom Homan and his response to the media.
We removed terrorists from the country this weekend. I can't believe any media would question the president's ability to remove terrorists from this country.
But what do you say? What do you say to those who say you? What do you say to those who claim you're using a 200-year-old law to circumvent due process?
An old law? Not as old as the Constitution. We still pay attention to that, don't we?
But some would say this is.
How many more terrorists do you plan on deporting to El Salvador?
That, ladies and gentlemen, is an example of common sense. The U.S. Constitution is the oldest living legal document in our history as a country. And so when a leftist comes out and tries to make their argument all about how old the Alien Enemies Act is and why President Trump shouldn't be able to use it, remind them everything's based on the U.S. Constitution. Now, Tom Homan wasn't the only person to stick it to the media. Here's Stephen Miller doing the same thing to CNN.
So you called the judge's order just earlier today, quote, patently unlawful, end quote, and said that it was an assault on democracy itself. Does that mean that the administration is ignoring this order, and might you ignore future court orders that meet the criteria you laid out?
The President of the United States and his administration reserve all rights under the Constitution to conduct national security operations in defense of the United States. The Alien Enemies Act, which was passed into law by the founding generation of this country, men like John Adams, was written explicitly to give the President the authority to repel an alien invasion of the United States. That is not something that a district court judge has any authority whatsoever to interfere with, to enjoin, to restrict, or to restrain any way. You can read the law yourself. There's not one clause in that law that makes it subject to judicial review, let alone district court review.
Now let's understand something. This is a post that was put up by Daniel Baldwin on X. It's a screenshot of the response from Pam Bondi to the judge. Bondi highlights immediately, quote, the court lacks the jurisdiction to interfere with Trump's national security and foreign affairs authority. They also say that Trump's role as commander-in-chief is not subject to judicial review or intervention. And so the argument that the White House is making is that the action that President Trump took over the weekend, first, protected because it was due to national security reasons. Secondly, it was a bilateral agreement with El Salvador, the United States of America, for those same national security reasons. And so their pushback continues to be, what district court judge possesses the authority to override that? He is the commander-in-chief at the end of the day. And here is Stephen Miller saying just that.
The lives of Jocelyn Nungary or Laken Riley or anyone
the federal
else.
Courts. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that what you said, there's a separation of powers. The judiciary exercises judgment and relief.
I don't speak for the White House. You are here to speak
I will
for
do.
You're here to speak for the White House.
I
just want you to answer that one simple question.
I am.
Okay?
Ready? Here we go. Under a proper reading of the Constitution, district court judges provide relief to individual plaintiffs seeking relief. District court judges do not have the authority, as a general matter, to enjoin the functioning of the executive branch. But their authority is at its lowest point when the president is exercising his powers as commander-in-chief. And I asked you a question, you never answered it. Can a judge enjoin troop movements overseas? Can a district court judge enjoin troop movements overseas?
Stephen,
yes or no?
I am not going to get into the
just say no, and then you'll know that I'm right.
This is a
just
separate
say no,
question,
and you'll know that
Stephen.
I'm right.
Okay, we're not talking about other troops
the
overseas.
President,
I need to ask you about something else.
The president issued a proclamation delineating in detail how the Venezuelan regime sent this gang, this terrorist organization, to our shores. And by the way, and I love being here, but all the outrage that we are seeing from the Democrat Party and from the corporate media, none of that outrage was expressed when little Jocelyn Nungary was tortured and beaten to death. None of that outrage was expressed when our nation was flooded by illegal aliens.
Now, this quote on the screen sums up the problem really from the left. This includes the media, of course. If the Democrats want to argue in favor of turning a plane full of rapists, murderers, and gangsters back to the United States, that's a fight we are more than happy to take. I said that earlier in my video yesterday. This is from the White House press secretary. Why are they trying to fight President Trump on this? This is a losing issue. Now, this next clip, this is the White House press secretary being questioned by Caitlin Collins on why didn't the Trump administration listen to the judge when he verbally said that the plane needed to turn around.
You keep talking about the judge's written order, which hit the docket Saturday night at about 7:26 p.m., but he issued a verbal order before that at about 6:45 and 6:48 p.m. based on the court hearing, a verbal order from the bench. Does the White House feel the need to comply with a verbal order from this judge?
Again, as I said, all of the planes subject to the written order of this judge departed U.S. soil, U.S. territory before the judge's written order.
But what about the verbal order, which of course carries the same legal weight as a written order, and said for the planes to turn around if they were in the air?
There's actually questions about whether a verbal order carries the same weight as a legal order, as a written order, and our lawyers are determined to ask and answer those questions in court. Sean.
And that's why I want to show you guys exactly what the media is saying. This is Ground News. You guys can check it out for yourself by going to ground.news/Devori. Now, we use this tool to produce the show. It shows you exactly what both sides are saying about all the stories that is in the media. And this one is no different. Trump administration faces legal scrutiny over deportations to El Salvador, right? And outlets on the left, they're very skewed. Donald Trump ignoring court order is doomsday scenario. Legal analysts. Here's another one. Trump administration deports villains to one of the gang members despite court order. Here's one more. Trump defies court order, deports hundreds under 1798 wartime law and unprecedented legal overreach. Now, what's interesting is the individuals that were deported on that plane was not actually due to the 1798 wartime law, but they won't tell you that. And if we look at articles from the right, White House says deportation flights didn't defy judge's order. There's another one. These are the monsters. Trump admin deported over 250 gang members to El Salvador. And by the way, that's why Ground News has this blind spot tool that helps you see which stories are being disproportionately reported by one side of the political spectrum. And when you're thinking about President Trump deporting TDA gang members, pay attention to how MSDNC talks about it versus Fox News. And this is why I love Ground News, and you will too. So subscribe through my link at ground.news/Devori or download the mobile app and use offer code Devori for 40% off the Vantage plan, which will give you unlimited access to everything that we just covered in this video. Now, let me provide an example of how the media is still holding on to the term constitutional crisis. They're now applying it to this story. Hear it for yourself.
But the question of the hour, is a constitutional crisis now officially upon us? From the invocation of an 18th century law that was the basis for some of the darkest chapters in America's history, things like the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, now being used to deport hundreds of people, to the sudden removal of an immigrant doctor here legally, both moves seemingly from what we know at this hour, at the time in open defiance of court orders.
So speaking of court orders, Julie Kelly on X, she's actually at the hearing right now between the judge and the Department of Justice. And the only thing I really want to read to you guys that I find to be crazy. Now, I just want to share with you this post that she put up. The judge is now agitated that his verbal direction to return planes during the hearing is not considered controlling, meaning it's not actually needed to be adhered to until the official document was posted, which didn't happen until 7:30 p.m. The judge is now saying the Department of Justice should not have allowed any planes to take off on Saturday because the DOJ knew the judge was holding a hearing at 5 p.m. And the judge's first-minute order related only to the 5 illegal plaintiffs. The judge is saying that the Trump admin should not have executed the president's order because he was going to hold a hearing and may have stopped the government from deporting under Alien Enemies Act. This is bat crazy. Would love to see the judge's comms with the ACLU before a lawsuit was filed Saturday morning. Let's just think about that for a second. The judge wanted the Department of Justice to not follow the orders from the commander-in-chief because of a hearing that would take place later in the day that maybe or maybe not prevent the government from deporting these illegal aliens. Can someone please in the comments section make that make sense?
Criticism that the Alien Enemies Act has only been invoked 3 other times. They were all during times of war. Do you feel that you're using it appropriately right now?
Well, this is a time of war because Biden allowed millions of people, many of them criminals, many of them at the highest level, They emptied jails out. Other nations emptied their jails into the United States. That's an invasion. And these are criminals, many, many criminals. Murderers, drug dealers at the highest level, drug lords, people from mental institutions. That's an invasion. They invaded our country. So this isn't, in that sense, this is war.
So I think it's very clear where the White House stands and how President Trump sees this entire issue. But what about the opposite side? They are arguing that these TDA gang members did not get their due process. And again, that's why Democrats will lose, because majority of Americans will not relate to that point. Hear it for yourself.
But look, without due process, without them going before an immigration judge, without the White House telling us what crimes these people may have committed or whether or not their tattoos merely linked them to this gang, it's really hard to know. I'll even point out during the Biden administration, they had a list of over 600 people they said may have connection to Tren de Aragua, but they said some of these people may have simply been victims who had to pay this gang or get a tattoo in order to survive. It was really difficult to see who exactly in that group would have been a high-level crime member. And that's exactly why the plaintiff's attorneys filed that lawsuit on Saturday to stop the deportations before these people could get due process.
This is so frustrating, okay? Because Americans do not care whether or not they are actual TDA gang members, okay? They're in the country illegally. Screw due process, get them out of here. That's exactly what the mindset is for most of Americans. And for the record, the White House press secretary came out today and clarified exactly who they are and what crimes they have committed.
I would remind everybody in this room that Tren de Aragua is a foreign terrorist organization operating within the United States of America because the previous administration allowed them to invade our country. These are monsters who tortured, raped, and murdered a 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungre. They murdered 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley. They led a multi-state sex trafficking operation involving smuggling women into the United States, holding them in stash houses in Louisiana, Florida, New Jersey, Texas, and Virginia, and forcing them into prostitution. They kidnapped and murdered a 33-year-old woman in Texas. They sexually and physically assaulted a woman and her daughter in Wisconsin. They conducted a mass shooting in Illinois. They peddled untraceable ghost guns across New York City, took over an Aurora, Colorado apartment complex where they kidnapped and tortured victims. And by the way, many of you in the mainstream media said that didn't happen. It turned out that it did. And because of the effective immigration policies of this administration, those foreign terrorists were detained and they are no longer operating on American soil, and we have President Trump to thank for that.
Yeah, so when she reads off the list of these crimes that have been committed by these TDA gang members, once again, America does not care or have any sympathy for these individuals. They want them out. And Democrats are spending too much time trying to defend that. And let me ask you a question. Who do you respect more? The individual that was just crying about due process, or Tom Homan, who said this on Fox News earlier today?
You're going to run out of money. It doesn't look like you're getting support from the Democrats on this. You're going against the judges now. What's next?
Another flight. Another flight every day. Teams are going to be out there every day. Every day, the men and women of ICE are going to be in the neighborhoods of this nation arresting criminal, illegal alien, public safety threats, and national security threats. Lawrence, you're not going to stop us. We made a promise to the American people. The President Trump has made a promise to the American people. We're going to make this country safe again. I wake up every morning loving my job because I work for the greatest president in the history of my life, and we're going to make this country safe again. I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
Now, if only Democrats could have that same level of conviction when it comes to keeping America safe and listening to the moderate Democrats out there, independents, people in the center, swing voters. They just refuse to listen to those people, and that's why they're going to continue to lose. And I guarantee more people respect Tom Homan than they do the Democratic Party at this point. And that brings me to the question of this video. Do you believe ultimately President Trump's going to win on this issue legally? Or do you think he's going to lose to this district court judge? Let me know what your thoughts are about all this. I believe this district court judge is beyond his jurisdiction. If President Trump is absolutely acting in his capacity as commander-in-chief and a judge is trying to override that, then that means a judge could stop the commander-in-chief from deploying troops, which everybody knows is not feasible. So let me know what your thoughts are about all that in the comment section below. Now, it's been a horrific 2 weeks for Democrats, and that continues because earlier this morning, President Trump dropped a bombshell scandal on everyone, exposing the idea that President Biden was unaware of the executive orders and preemptive pardons that were issued out because it wasn't his actual physical signature. It was his signature from a machine. If you guys missed out on that story and more from earlier today, all you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now.